and welcome to the program. I am Adeshewa Josh. It's time to take you through major headlines around the world. And of course, we have to start in Israel, where the situation there appears to be getting out of hand. Israeli airstrikes on Gaza and rocket fire on Israel have continued as Israel's operation against Palestinian militants enters its 7th day. Israel has been recounting its own operation. It says nearly 1,000 rockets have been fired from Gaza in just 7 days. It also claimed it shot down a Palestinian drone near Ashdod just this morning. Thousands of people fled their homes in northern Gaza after an Israeli warning.
On Sunday, July the 13th, the Israeli military warned residents of the northern border town of Beit Lahia to leave or risk their lives when, after nightfall, it planned to intensify airstrikes against suspected Palestinian rocket launchers among civilian homes. A UN aid agency said around a quarter of Beit Lahia, 70,000 residents fled, fearing Israeli attacks, which, according to Gaza officials, have killed more than 166 people, most of them non-combatants, since the cross-border shelling war began. Israel says there have been more than 940 rocket launches by Hamas and other factions from Gaza over the past week. It has not suffered fatalities due in part to the success of its Iron Dome rocket interceptors, but the bombardments have disrupted life in major cities, paralyzed vulnerable southern towns, and triggered Israeli mobilization of troops for a possible Gaza invasion if the Palestinian rockets persisted. In an interview for US-based television networks on Sunday, July the 13th, the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu accused Palestinian militant groups in the Gaza Strip of hiding rockets behind civilians in order to protect them.
Trying to kill as many as they... here's the difference between us. We're using missile defense to protect our civilians, and they're using their civilians to protect their missiles. That's basically the difference. They're embedding these rockets that they're firing wholesale into our cities, terrorist rocketing, trying to kill as many as they can. They're not succeeding because of two reasons. One is because we've developed this incredible missile defense system, which I think is a historic development in the history of defensive warfare.
Netanyahu went on to say that Israel's 6-day offensive on the Gaza Strip, which has killed over 160 Palestinians, was succeeding as Israel was targeting those firing rockets.
The rocketeers are firing from homes. These homes are actually command posts of the Hamas and Islamic Jihad army. So that's where they have their secure communications, weapon caches, rockets, hidden map rooms, and so on. These are their command posts. Obviously, we're not going to give them immunity, and so we have to attack them, and we try to minimize it as we can.
International pressure on both sides for a return to calm has increased, with the UN Security Council calling for cessation of hostilities and Western foreign ministers due to meet next Sunday on strategies. Hostilities along the Israel-Gaza frontier first intensified last month after Israeli forces arrested hundreds of Hamas activists in the Israeli-occupied West Bank, following the abduction of 3 Jewish teenagers there who were later found killed. A Palestinian youth was then killed in Jerusalem in a suspected Israeli revenge attack. Despite intensified Israeli military action, militants continued to launch rocket after rocket across the border. The Gaza Health Ministry said at least 166 Palestinians have died during 6 days of warfare, and more than 1,000 people have been wounded.
Well, persistence pays off eventually, at least in the case of the rescue operation of Costa Concordia. The wrecked Italian cruise ship has been successfully raised from the undersea platform which it has been resting on for the past year. Salvage workers say the wreck, which has been the target of one of the biggest maritime salvage operations in history, is now floating about 3 feet off the platform. In all, the refloating operation is expected to take 6 to 7 days. The ship will then be towed to its home port, Genoa, where it will be scrapped. Now, a Ukrainian military transport aircraft has been shot down in the east amid fighting with separatist rebels. A statement on the presidential website said the AN-26 plane was hit at an altitude of 6,500 meters. It said the plane had been targeted with a more powerful missile weapon than a shoulder-carried missile, probably fired from Russia. Russia has not commented on the claim, but the crew, thank God, survived.
At least 3 civilians were killed by shelling in Ukraine's eastern city of Luhansk on Sunday, July the 13th, as shocked residents assessed the damage. In the Luhansk Southern District School, a female guard has been killed by shrapnel and the building sustained serious damage.
You
are standing next to the school number 51 of the southern quarter of Luhansk. As you can see, walls are still standing after a massive attack, but the school sustained serious damage. A female guard at the musical school was killed. She didn't have enough time to hide in the basement.
Shocked residents of nearby apartment blocks badly damaged by shelling described their ordeal. They've been shooting from all sides. I have small children, so we put them into a bathtub and laid down on the floor, listening to shattered windows falling and people around screaming. Then we went down to the basement. Another resident, a middle-aged man, described the scene he saw soon after the shelling.
I am not an eyewitness. I arrived 15 to 20 minutes after the shelling. A woman was here on the ground with 2 canisters of water. She went to get water and was killed by shrapnel.
Ukrainian forces taking the lead from Poroshenko, who swore to find and destroy the separatists who killed 23 servicemen in rocket strikes on Friday, July the 11th, went on the offensive across a broad range of targets south and southeast of the border town of Luhansk and near the city itself. A spokesman for the so-called Luhansk People's Republic said today that 30 volunteer fighters had been killed in the Ukrainian fire on Oleksandrivka, and that's a village to the east of the town.
I'm not being joined by our colleague at the Voice of America, David Scherf. That's Daniel Scherf, I beg your pardon. He's going to be telling us more about this incident. Thanks a lot for joining us on the program, Daniel.
My pleasure.
Okay, so what more can you tell us about this incident?
Well, right now the reports that we're getting are all from the Ukrainian military side, that apparently this military transport plane with about 20 people on board was shot down by a missile or potentially by an aircraft missile, either from the ground or from an aircraft. And they're saying that that they believe that it probably was fired from Russian territory. Now, if that's true, it would be a very serious escalation of this conflict. Russia so far has claimed to be not directly involved in the fighting that's been going on the ground, although there are many accusations that Russia has been supplying weapons to the rebels. Now, the rebels claim that they are the ones who actually shot down this plane, and they did shoot down a similar plane about a month ago that was about to land in Luhansk. But the difference was that that plane was at a much lower altitude. And what the Ukrainian military is saying is that this plane was far too high for the kind of missiles that the rebels have. So they believe that this must have come from the Russian side.
Well, are there enough proof to link Russia to this? What more proof do they have to say Russia is actually involved in this operation?
No, that's a very good point. What they're saying that they have in terms of proof is simply the fact that the plane was so high and the missiles that they believe the rebels have in their possession are not capable of reaching those heights. Moscow, of course, we are expecting will probably deny any involvement in this situation, but actually proving whether or not Moscow was involved, whether the Russians were supplying these weapons, or whether it was simply the rebels were able to take command of some missiles that were there in Ukraine. It's hard to ground and actually are able to see as an eyewitness. So it will be something that I'm sure will be a matter of accusation and rejection in the coming days.
That's right. Okay, so now because it appears we're seeing some sort of back-to-back same kind of operation. The last time also rockets were fired at a military plane. It appears there is a plan to destabilize the Ukrainian military. Is this what we're looking at right now?
Well, this is what a lot of political analysts say, that they feel that that Moscow's involvement in Ukraine is an attempt to keep the situation unstable so that they can have more leverage over the government in Kiev, which is very much Western-leaning. It's pro-European. It's backed by the United States. And this is something that Moscow doesn't want to see on its border. It wants Ukraine to remain under its sphere of influence, as it was during Soviet times, and under more recent presidents, such as Viktor Yanukovych, until he was forced to flee to Russia after a very large movement, an uprising that took place in Kiev that led to a lot of this instability and fears about who was going to be influencing the country. So certainly there is a lot of concern about where things are headed. This could escalate rather quickly if Russia would get involved militarily. NATO, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, had a statement today saying that they believe at least 10,000 Russian troops have moved up to the border within the last week. So this is, once again, a potential signal coming from Moscow that they could get more directly involved in the conflict, or to send a message to the Ukrainian military that they should not be taking such direct action against the rebels as they have been, shelling Luhansk and shelling suburbs of Donetsk, where a lot of the rebels have pulled back to. So we'll have to wait and see what happens in the coming days, but certainly a very tenuous and situation with a lot of tension on the ground.
Thank you so much, Daniel, for sharing your thoughts with us on this issue. By the way, Daniel is speaking to us from Moscow. Thanks a lot. Moving on to other stories now. Without a doubt, the eyes of the world were fixed on Brazil last night for the World Cup finals. And it's no longer news that the Germans took the cup home. Congrats to them. But what could be tech news are the reactions that followed, particularly in Buenos Aires, Argentina, where disappointed fans displayed their frustrations in violent ways. However, Germany coach Joachim Löw hailed Mario Götze as the miracle boy after his extra time strike sealed a 1-0 win over Argentina in Sunday's World Cup final.
When Argentina lost to Germany after a very intense match, some Argentines keyed into Lionel Messi's mood and let out their frustrations in downtown Buenos Aires' San Martin Park. Clashes between riot police and brick-hurling youths broke out at the iconic obelisk monument, where tens of thousands of fans had gathered after the match to celebrate reaching the final on the turf of their arch soccer rivals, Brazil. Fans climbed onto bus stops and scaled lampposts as chants of Argentina, Argentina rang out and fireworks exploded.